Hi, and welcome to the webinar, 6 Skills for Effective Parent Advocacy. My name is Pat Anderson, and I will be presenting along with my coworker, Vava Guthrie. This webinar is funded in part through a grant from the Minnesota Department of Education. Today's webinar is scheduled from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Audio for this webinar is being delivered through your computer speakers or headphones. If you have trouble with the audio through your computer, you may call in using the number on the screen. Be aware that long-distance charges may apply. If you need technical support during the webinar, you may call our number 952-838-9000. Say that you need support for the webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the PACER website within 1 to 2 weeks from today. All participants' phones will be muted during the entire webinar. Participants can ask or submit questions to the presenters using the question answer feature located in the lower portion of the webinar toolbar. Type your question into the white box and click on the send button. We will try to answer as many questions as time allows. If your question is not answered during the webinar, we will contact you after the webinar to answer your question personally. PACER has been Minnesota's Parent Training and Information Center since 1978. When PACER was established, it began with one project, Parents Helping Parents. Then as now, PACER was staffed primarily by parents of children with disabilities dedicated to educating other parents and improving the lives of children with disabilities throughout Minnesota. The original philosophy of Parents Helping Parents remains the focus. Today, PACER offers more than 30 programs such as the Simon Technology Center and Count Me In Puppets for parents, students, professionals, and other parent organizations. PACER's board includes parents of children with disabilities. What does it mean to be an advocate? Supporter, backer, believer, promoter. We parents can and are all of these. You undoubtedly already have many skills in these areas. The goal of this workshop is to expand your skills so that you can become a more effective advocate for your child. This workshop will give an overview of the skills and resources to learn more about them. As an advocate, these are skills I depend upon, and I learn more every day. Look at this list. Ask yourself, which is my strongest? My weakest? Are you a beginner? If so, that's great. Glad you're here. In this workshop, we will be referring to IEPs and the special education process for 3 to 21-year-olds in Minnesota. If your child is younger, you may want to take advantage of our early childhood workshops as well. Why is it important to understand your child's disability? It can help you understand if the special education services are appropriate. It also helps you understand the options for educating a child with this specific disability. It can help you ask educated, informed questions. High expectations helps a person understand your child's disability. You can maybe get some information from other adults who have the same disability as your child to help give an idea of future expectations for your child. We have a publication that I refer to, and you can get through our publication called High Expectations. And 3 of the points in High Expectations that would be helpful are that you can expect that you will become a more effective advocate for your child. You can expect that your child will participate in their own success, and expect that the school will be a partner with you. Assistive technology often is a key to learning and access. It's not just a computer. It can be many different pieces of equipment. You can learn what technology helps a person with this disability. Our Simon Technology Center has access to many of these types of equipment, and by logging on to our website you can connect with Simon Technology Center, or you can also contact them directly by phone. The thing to remember is that with assistive technology, that's something that must be considered annually in the IEP. Also, that schools have the availability of doing assistive technology evaluations. So if that's something that you feel may help with your child's education, you could check with them on that. You also want to make sure you know what resources are available to help increase your knowledge as far as your child's disability. There are numerous disability groups, part of which on PACER's resource list, we have a listing for many of those disability groups and organizations. Also through support groups in the community that you might be familiar with or need to become familiar with. Checking out websites is another great way of getting additional resources. In fact, on PACER's website, if you click on resources and scroll down to websites, it can help. You can get a direct connection to them. Also, find out who your district staff people are who are more familiar with your child's specific disability. They may be able to connect you with some additional resources or even provide you with some information. And also, for those who don't know, the Minnesota Department of Education has a disability-specific person. So by contacting them, they could be another resource for you and for the IEP team. So understanding your child's disability is that first skill, and these are just some resources then that will help you be able to do that. Skill 2 is to know your school district. Now, why would it be important to know which administrators have decision-making authority at your school? Well, that can be very important in the IEP process, especially when we're looking at maybe some additional equipment or services that your child might need. So you want to make sure you know who those decision-making administrators are. It's important for parents to know what the district policies are. You should make sure that you ask for a copy, if you don't get it at the beginning of the school year, of what the district policies are, and refer back to that. Funding considerations. We always need to know what type of funding is available. Through this workshop, there's a flyer that is entitled Funding that came out of our SEEK modules. And one of the facts that's stated with that is that when Congress first authorized IDEA in 1975, the federal government agreed to pay for the excess cost of educating a child with a disability compared to a regular education student. This translates to 40% of the national per pupil expenditure, the highest this percentage the federal government has ever paid was only 34% in 2009. However, some school districts across the nation have used this increase in funds for regular education purposes. The shortfall in federal funding increases demand on the school district's general fund balance. So as a parent, you need to know, where does my local school district get their funding, which comes from the state and from local taxation. The school district then in turn, because they receive that funding from the state, needs to make reports to the state as to how that funding is being spent, and the state then can make a determination about whether or not funding should be withheld if the district isn't complying with what they should be doing. Then in turn, the state is responsible to the federal government through IDEA to make sure that those funding resources are being used appropriately. But there is a handout that will explain a little further into detail about that. With knowing your school district, I already mentioned the policies of the districts, which would include transportation. They more than likely have a policy on bullying and harassment, graduation requirements, appearance, school choice, and discipline issues. So again, check to make sure you have that information. Knowing who your special education director is for the district is real important. You can find out that information typically by either asking the case manager for your child's IEP would more than likely know that. Otherwise, on the district's website, that information is always located. Or you can contact PACER. We also have a listing of all the special ed directors in the state of Minnesota. And in addition to that, the Minnesota Department of Education also has those listed there. If you're not familiar with your SEEK, which is your Special Education Advisory Council, you may want to check into that and become an active member, participant in that. Other advisory councils that might be available in your community are community transition interagency committees or other citizen committees such as curriculum or space or budget type information. Also in the material that you should be able to access is a handout called Know Your District, which also will go into a little additional information than what we just went over here. So that was skill number 2. Skill number 3 is know your rights and responsibilities. Parents need to know the rules of the game too. Parents need to participate from a position of knowledge. So as a parent, you're going to need to make sure you get your procedural safeguards, which are something that are given at least annually. And you need to know it's just a partial list of what the federal regulations identify as your rights in the special education process. Through the procedural safeguards, it's going to let you know things like you have the right to disagree with the school, disagree with an evaluation that was completed, and be able to request an independent evaluation. Let you know that as a parent, you need to be involved in the process. So if you haven't read your procedural safeguards, make sure that you do that. IDEA is a revolutionary act in the public education, as it's finally put parents at a decision-making table. It's brought us as parents to that process where we plan for the education of our child, and as a parent, we're the only ones that have the right to give or deny consent. Kidlaw.org in 2002 stated, "Parents have a host of procedural rights designed to empower them to obtain appropriate services for their child from their local school district. The absence of parent advocacy can deny a child access to appropriate services. That again is why it's so important that you as a parent are involved in the process. When you think about it, you're the only one who has an in-depth, long-term relationship with your child. You're that only permanent member of the special education team. As your child moves from school to school, there's going to be a change in those people that are working with him, but you're that constant that's going to be with him on a day-to-day basis. Research and experience has also shown that special education is much more effective when parents are involved in that process. An example, there was a parent at a workshop who asked one of the advocates, who was supposed to tell me about all my rights and responsibilities? Well, the school gives you your procedural safeguards, but there's nothing in the law that says they have to explain them to you or tell you what they are. So as a parent, it really is your responsibility to make sure that you read that information and know your rights. Other ways that you're able to find out what your rights as a parent in this process are through PACER. We do many workshops throughout the year, including this one that we're doing today. But two workshops that might be very useful for those of you listening today. One is understanding the special education process, where it goes through what those rights and responsibilities are. And the other is understanding the IEP, where we actually go through each one of those required components of the IEP to help you be able to understand what sort of things you should be looking for when you're reviewing the IEPs. So if you get the opportunity, make sure you check in on those workshops. Another great resource for you is accessing the different websites that are available out there. Naturally, I'm going to push PACER's website. I think we've got some really wonderful information on there and very helpful information for parents. Not only will you find links to recorded workshops like we're doing today, but you will also have access to a lot of our publications that are on the web, and you're able to either print them out or feel free to order them. Also, IDEA, which is the Government Education Program, ed.gov. By going to that website, you will be able to access all of the federal laws that are related to special education. The Minnesota Department of Education also is another one of those resources that you're able to access and get additional information as far as not only special ed but also regular education. So by fulfilling your responsibilities to the best of your ability is in the long term going to help your child be more successful. Also, as a parent, when we're talking about your rights and responsibilities, you're involved and able to participate in every step of that special education process. You'll be part of the team that looks at it and makes all decisions when it comes to identifying if your child does have a disability. Through the evaluation process, you'll be able to determine with the team if your child has a disability and is eligible for special education services. Again, you're involved anytime we're talking about placement in any appropriate special education for a child that is eligible. And then also in the provision of a free appropriate public education, which you'll hear me refer to as FAPE, for your child. So identification, evaluation, placement, and the provision of FAPE are all times that you as a parent have a very involved role. Always remember that the term team includes you. Other ways that a parent is involved is that as a parent you have the right to request and review all of your child's regular and special education records. You have what I call the power of the pen. You have the right to give or deny consent for any services that the school district may be proposing. You also have the use of specific dispute resolution options when you disagree or deny consent for the district to do something. And we're going to discuss those a little later on in the presentation. The other important thing is that student participation is important. As adults, we need to listen to our children and what they want out of life. So involving them in the process as soon as they're capable of doing it is really important. It's their life, so the sooner they're able to start making decisions and give input is going to help facilitate the process. She's thinking, yeah. Well, it's going to bring up a couple of questions because it's going to determine if it's a public school or are we talking about a private school, because that could make a difference. Public school, okay. So that funding is received through the state of Minnesota, and the district also receives local funds from taxes within your local area, your school district area.
Okay, so we've gotten quite a few questions.
Oh.
I'm sorry. We've gotten quite a few questions, but I want to focus on something that Pat is presenting. Please know that you
Okay, parents as partners. That's one of the things we really stress in a couple of our other workshops also, is the fact that this is a team process and parents need to feel that they are just as much a part of that team. Casey Stengel once stated, it's easy to get good players, getting them to play together, that's the hard part. And I think that's very true. But I think if we can look at a few things, we can help the team process move forward. We always want to recognize that each of us coming to the table is playing a different role. And neither you as the parent or the school can educate your child alone. Understanding that these different roles and backgrounds of each participant may help you and schools work together more effectively. Here are some differences to consider. Educators have chosen their careers in education, while most parents do not know that they will have a child with a disability. You will be involved with your child for life, while most educators are involved with your child for a much shorter period. Educators have formal training and receive payment for their role. Public school personnel are employed by an agency, which is the school. Both you and the educators have the goal, though, of developing an appropriate IEP and an education for your child. Parents, you need to know that you are equal partners, even if you often don't feel that way. Always remember that your knowledge and opinions are valuable. Again, you as parents are the only ones that have that in-depth, long-term, daily relationship with the child. As a parent, you can learn new skills to communicate clearly and assertively. Parents have the power of giving or withholding that consent for services. Remember I said you have the power of the pen. You give them permission whether or not they can move forward with something. Again, we're the only continuous person on that IEP team. And then taking a look at partners. Think about partners working together. Typically, you're going to find that partners have the same overall purpose or goal. They make an effort to communicate clearly, show respect for what each partner brings to the relationship, because we do. We come with individual roles or jobs, and we have to have a clear understanding not only of our own, but an understanding of the other person's. Partners have an opportunity to make changes with the permission of the other partners. We have opportunities for giving feedback to one another. We bring different skills and information to the endeavor and are all accountable for the outcomes. One thing we find that seems to be helpful is problem-solving strategies being used early in the process. Don't wait for things to get totally out of control before you address an issue. But these are all concepts that can apply to parent and school partnerships. That business of this partnership is achieving an effective education for your child with a disability. When this remains the focus of all the adult partners, the child is going to benefit. We want to make sure that it's a win-win situation for everybody. So maybe looking at it as, let's see how we can reach our mutual goal. Not looking at who was wrong, but what went wrong, and then how can we fix it. So again, partnering with the team, working together, sharing the same goals, knowing that we each have individual roles to play, but yet we need to come together with our different set of skills and problem-solving skills and be able to sit down in the best interest of the child. In 1975, Congress passed a law known as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. This law says that all children with disabilities have the right to go to public schools. It also says that they have the right to an appropriate education. This requirement for a free, appropriate public education is often referred to as FAPE. The next few slides will be a very brief overview. We recommend you attend one of PACER's IDEA workshops, the ones I mentioned earlier, understanding the special education process and understanding the IEP, for more complete, in-depth information on the special ed process. Children receive special education services for many kinds of disabilities. The disability categories that may qualify for special education are autism spectrum disorder, developmental cognitive disability, deaf blindness, emotional or behavioral disorder, deaf or hard of hearing, specific learning disability, physical impairment, speech or language impairment, vision impairment including blindness, traumatic brain injury, severely multiply impaired, and other health disabilities. A child with any of these disabilities must also be determined to be eligible. We'll get into a little more information on one of the evaluation slides on that. But basically, what it's saying is that just having a diagnosed disability doesn't automatically qualify a student for special ed. There's also specific criteria that they have to meet. Special education is designed to meet the unique needs of each child. Even children in the same disability category may receive different services in different locations from different types of teachers or therapists. These uniquely designed services give each child the same opportunity as all children to receive instruction and to learn. Parents do not pay for these services. A child's special education plan is written down on a document called an Individualized Education Program, IEP. The Early Childhood document is called an Individualized Family Service Plan, IFSP. Some districts may use a form called the Triple IP, or the Individualized Interagency Intervention Plan. Each child who receives special education has an IEP. The services are planned so the child can make meaningful educational progress. The school district is required to provide the services that are written into an IEP. All children, including those with disabilities, have a right to a public school education where the general curriculum is taught. Students are expected to be taught academic subjects and to make progress in the general curriculum. Children who have a disability that substantially limits a major life activity, such as learning or walking, may have additional rights under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. This law prohibits discrimination based on disability. A Section 504 accommodation plan tells what a school will do to give this child with a disability access or accommodations so that the child can participate in public school education on an equal basis. For example, a girl who has diabetes may need to go to the nurse's office every day to have her blood sugar tested in order to be safe at school. A boy who has ADHD may need more freedom to move around the classroom. Currently, 13% of Minnesota school children receive special education services. They have the right to a public school education, the right to accommodations so they can fully participate, and the right to special education instruction. So in summary, when you look at the circles on the slide, children who qualify for special education have access to full participation in the general curriculum as well as the right to receive specialized instruction. They also have the protection of non-discrimination under the Section 504. If the special education process seems complicated, the analogy of building a house may be helpful. Just as a house starts with its foundation or basement and ends with a roof, the building of a special education program has a logical order. The special education evaluation is the foundation that identifies the educational needs. Through the identification of educational needs, this forms the framework for the determination of what the services are to meet those identified needs, like the first floor of a house supports the second. Placement with special education and related service in the most typical environment appropriate for the child caps off the process, like the roof caps off a house. So again, it's that special ed evaluation, which is the foundation for any special ed services that are identified through the needs. And then lastly, once it's determined what the needs and the services are, placement is a decision that's made. Through the special ed process, there are two documents that parents need to be familiar with. One is the Evaluation Summary Report, which is going to be the results of the testing and the information that's been gathered through that evaluation process. Remember, it's the evaluation that identifies the needs, and then once the needs are determined, that IEP, or the Individualized Education Program, is written. And through that, then you take a look at what the services are and then where placement will be. Your child can receive the free appropriate public education to which he or she has a right when the school follows this logical progression. Special education services, as I mentioned earlier, are based on those identified needs that are found in the evaluation through parent concern, through special consideration, preferences, and interests of the student. We need to make sure we include the student's interests in this process too. The IEP will include the school services that the school will provide to meet the needs of your child in order for them to make meaningful educational progress. Again, placement is where special ed and related services are being provided for your child. The IEP team will talk about placement at the meeting. You must be invited to any meeting where your child's IEP or placement is being discussed. Your child will receive services in the least restrictive environment, or what you might hear called LRE, which means that the most typical setting possible given your child's needs. The most typical setting is the regular ed classroom with children who do not have disabilities, and that will be the first placement setting to consider. The school must be able to offer a continuum of service options to meet the needs of all children in an appropriate placement. Another resource that's available for you to find out more about the settings that we talk about sometimes, or that you'll see listed on the IEP, is in the Minnesota Guide to the IEP, which is a PACER publication. On page 19, it has a listing of those 8 federal settings and a description as to how much service is provided in each setting. So you may want to take a look at that so you understand the setting and the placement where your child is receiving those special ed services. At the completion of an IEP, you're going to receive a draft copy or a proposed copy. And as a parent, this is one of those opportunities for you to sit down and take a look at it and ask yourself, is this IEP an appropriate step toward a productive and independent life for my child? You know your child the best, and again, you're going to be there long after that IEP team has left the picture. So you want to make sure that the things that are written on that IEP are things that are going to help your child make progress. Remember, again, the data that's used to write the IEP comes from that evaluation. So, always make sure you go back and look at the evaluation and the identified needs and make sure that those are included on the IEP. Another resource is a handout that we have. It's called a parent homework sheet that helps you be able to organize that information so you're able to make sure that the appropriate things are being addressed. The other thing that comes along with your proposed IEP is a prior written notice and a consent form. So when the team is finished developing this IEP, you're going to get it along with a copy of these forms. And the parent consent or objection form is the paper that you will get that typically should have 3 boxes on it, and on those boxes, those 3 boxes, one says yes if you agree with it. There's another box that if you disagree, you want to check the no box and sign and return it. but there also should be a third box, or at least a discussion on a third box that says, I agree with some, but I disagree with others, and then you need to include what it is that you're in disagreement with. So it's the three boxes: yes, I agree, and the district may proceed; no, I disagree, and I know someone will contact me to discuss conciliation, mediation, or one of my other options. And then that third box is that I agree with some but disagree with some. That was one of the newer revisions to IDEA when it was rewritten in 2004. And what's nice about that is it gives the opportunity for the things that you do agree with to begin. So they can start implementing any of the things that you're in agreement with, but the things that you put in writing that you disagree with, they cannot initiate until there's agreement. All disagreements must be in writing. The school then will contact you to begin a process to resolve those disagreements. So that's the consent form that you get. Remember, I said you have the power of signing, and that's where that comes in. The prior written notice that I mentioned earlier is any time that the school is proposing to make a change or denying a request that you as a parent have made. They need to complete this form with their reasons for any changes or any denial of your request. So again, they're putting in writing what they're proposing to change or refusing to do. The other thing, as far as consent, you as the parent will receive that information. Parents, guardians, surrogate parents, and students who are 18 years of age or older who have had their rights transferred to them are the only ones who can legally sign that consent form. So if you have guardianship or conservatorship of your child once they turn 18, you will be the one signing that. Otherwise, at 18 years of age, that transfers to the 18-year-old, the student themselves, and they're the ones who will be making those decisions. A couple of things you want to look for as far as progress is make sure you're monitoring your child's needs in progress. You can do that by reviewing with the team and revising that IEP anytime during the school year. Typically the IEP is written for a one-year period, but if it's found that goals are being accomplished, or if there is insufficient progress towards any of those goals or in the general curriculum, that IEP team can come together again to re-look at the issues and see if any changes need to be done. Also, anytime there's new evaluation information available, that may be a time to reconvene that IEP team. Say, for example, during the summer you've had some private assessment done and you would like the team to consider that. That would indicate an appropriate time to request another IEP meeting. Also, if you or the school are seeing that there's some changes or concerns that hadn't previously been noted, that too would be a time to call that team back together and see if there needs to be some additional things addressed. Skill number 5 is to use clear and effective communication. And I'm going to do a 2-hour workshop in a 1-slide presentation. So it's going to be a brief overview, but just so you know that we do another workshop called Tips for Talking with School Staff that will get into more specific communication skills. The only person you have the power to change is yourself, but the way that you talk to the school staff has a direct relationship to how they interact with you. If you have a habit of exhibiting strong emotions, think about, is that getting what your child needs. We always want to make sure that we keep our eye on the prize, which is an effective education for your child with a disability. We always want to keep that focus there. So if what you're doing isn't working, you may want to think about changing your approach. One of our publications, called Working Together, is actually a book that we've based one of our workshops on, the Tips for Talking. And it just goes through a lot of the skills and provides you with some other ideas or ways of approaching things. It also is going to emphasize that we need to listen. As parents, we need to listen as much as we talk at those IEP meetings, because by listening to others, asking questions that we have and communicating our concerns and ideas, we're going to get the communication open and rolling between everybody. Listening is going to give you the information that you need. You want to make sure that the speaker is sharing opinions or facts. You're going to know if it's a fact because there's going to be data or records that are going to back up what's being said. Opinions can be helpful in some situations, but when we're designing a program for our child's education, facts are what we're going to build everything on. Data is so important. All decisions should be based on those facts. Whether or not you agree, try to understand what the other person is saying. Make sure that you understand what the other person is saying. You might use statements like, "I think I heard you say, is that correct?" Or, "Tell me more so I'm sure I understand your view." Or, "Please explain that to me in another way so that I'm sure I understand." Be as clear and direct as possible with others. You want to make sure that they understand what you're saying. Give specific examples when you can. Again, keep the emphasis on your child's needs, not simply on services that you may want. Describe why something will help or how something will help. Remember that defensive people don't listen. Anytime we criticize, defensiveness increases and listening decreases. Give positive feedback and praise as often as possible. Turn negatives into positives. I like this one because, as an example, this could have been my son very easily. "He's always fighting" could mean, "It looks like my child needs to learn social skills." Or, "What a messy desk" actually could be rephrased to mean, "Maybe we need to teach some organizational skills." So how you word something can make a big difference in how it is looked at. Another helpful hint is to summarize what you and others have asked. Ask to be corrected if you're misinterpreted. Make sure things are in writing. And again, focus on the needs of the child, not what solution you want. So bring the problem to the table versus bringing the solution. Johnny is having just a terrible time getting from class A to class B. What can we do to help him? Approaching it that way versus, "I think we need to set him up with a para to get from class to class." So again, the wording and how you approach it can make a difference in the response that you get. Skill number 6 is know the dispute resolution options. As a parent, you may agree or disagree with your child's IEP, the evaluation results, or placement decision. Due process rights protect your right to help plan your child's educational program. These rights also provide methods for you in the school to try and reach an agreement if you disagree. One of our newest publications is the Minnesota Due Process Options Brochure, which you can access. It will be online shortly, but right now by calling Pacer Center or checking the resource list that we provided you with for this webinar, you can print out a copy of it. If you're not sure of which method might work best for you, you can always call Pacer Center and discuss your options with an advocate. There are many ways to resolve disagreements. It's usually best, and we encourage using informal methods or the level closest to the problem first. So something as simple as talking to the case manager or to the special ed team about your differences and be clear about why you don't agree. This is often the easiest way to solve a problem. An example might be that following an IEP meeting, you received a proposed IEP, and even though you remember discussing special ed busing at the meeting, you don't see that it's been included on the IEP. An informal way of resolving that would be to call the case manager and say, you know, I know we talked about this at the meeting. I've got it in my notes that I took, but I don't see it written on the IEP. It may be that the case manager says, you know what, you're right. I remember that discussion. That's my mistake. Let me make that revision and get it resent out to you. So that would be an example of informally resolving the situation. Sometimes more formal means are necessary. In these next three methods that I'm going to talk about, parents and school staff make decisions themselves to resolve disagreements. So through conciliation, mediation, and facilitated IEP, those are formal procedures where the team itself is making those decisions. With conciliation, it's a meeting with school district staff to discuss and make decisions about your concerns. Not all team members are required to be present, and usually a higher level district representative will attend these meetings. Schools must provide conciliation within 10 calendar days of your request when you disagree with identification, evaluation, educational placement, or the provision of FAPE. Within 5 business days of the end of a conciliation meeting, you'll be sent a copy of the meeting summary and a new IEP if the team agreed to any changes through that meeting. Mediation is a meeting between you and the school district. The most common issues for mediation are communication breakdown, distrust, and different perceptions of your child's needs. You and the school must both agree to try mediation or it can't be held. A person who does not work for the school runs the meeting and helps both sides find agreement. This person is called a mediator. The mediator is not a decision maker. If you and the school reach agreements, these are written on an agreement form that is signed by both parties. This agreement is then enforceable. With a facilitated IEP, it's a legal IEP team meeting that is run by an impartial facilitator who is not employed by the school. Again, this facilitator frequently is one of the same mediators who does mediation. The goal of a facilitated IEP meeting is to develop an IEP that the parents and the school can agree upon. This type of meeting is often held after the team has met several times but failed to develop a complete IEP to which all parties agree. In the following methods, except for the resolution, an outside decision maker will resolve the issues. So again, conciliation, mediation, and facilitated IEP, parents are still part of that decision-making process. A due process hearing may be requested either by you or the school. The Minnesota Department of Education has a sample request form. Schools will have legal representation, so you are advised to seek legal representation too. If you go to a due process hearing, a hearing officer, not you or the school, makes the final decision. However, with the resolution session or mediation, these will be offered by the school if you file for a due process hearing. The goal is to resolve the issues before going to a hearing. In this case, the parents and school staff are still the decision makers. If resolution isn't reached through that, then it would go back to decision making being done by the due process hearing officer. In Minnesota, parents also have the option of filing a state complaint when you or anyone actually believes that the school district is not following your child's IEP or special education law. This is the only method where the parent may not be directly involved. Complaint forms are available through the Minnesota Department of Education. MDE is the agency that investigates complaints and decides if a school district has violated a law. If it has, MDE will order the school to remedy the situation. So again, the dispute resolution options are options that are brought through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act that give parent rights as far as disagreements within that special education process. Additional information on this can be found on the Minnesota Department of Education's website, or if you have specific questions or are looking for additional information, you can contact PACER and speak with an advocate also. So now we want to take a look at that skills checklist and see, have you learned anything from it? So again, just to highlight what those 6 skills are, number 1 was understand your child's disability. It's going to help you be able to be a better advocate for a child. Number 2 was know your school district. By knowing your district and their policies, it will help you be able to work within that process. Number 3 is know your rights and responsibilities. Again, those are your rights through the special ed laws that allow you to be part of that decision making for your child. Number 4 is understand the special education process. Number 5 was using clear and effective communication and how that can make the team work closer together in the best interest for your child. And then number 6, knowing that you have options as to how to resolve disagreements that you have with the school. So you want to think about, what have you learned from that? Was there a particular area where you feel you need more information? And do you need more resources? Taking advantage of those resources that are out there and available, whether it's calling PACER and talking to an advocate, connecting with some of your local disability groups or your special ed groups in your district, and also checking with the Department of Education to see if there are additional resources there that would be available to you. Remember again, too, that the only person that you can change is you. No matter how much you wish the other person would learn some of these skills, you can't force it to happen, but you do have the power to change and grow yourself. And so through this process, you can make the difference in the life of your child with a disability. So I think we are ready now to go to some questions.
You mentioned this workshop is about advocacy tips and skills for families to stay in the process. And we've gotten a lot of questions around the IEP, and we have about half hour left. And I'm wondering if you're willing to take some of those questions. There are quite a few that we're going to have additional information question that we'll put on hold. We'll call you after today's presentation. But there are some general questions, and I can make some of the specific questions more general and speak to the group. Would that work for you?
That would work just fine.
One of the first questions we have, what steps do you have to follow in the IEP?
That's a real good question. And one of the first things you want to do, as I mentioned, talking about resolving differences, is you want to make sure you put your concerns in writing. What I typically as an advocate would do would be to tell a parent, put your concerns in writing, send a copy to the case manager of your child's IEP, and a copy of that to the director of special education. By doing that, you're letting them know that these are some concerns that I have, and as a team, we need to sit down and take a look at them.
Great, thank you. Do regular education
There's nothing in the law that identifies that they have to read the IEP. They do, however, have to know what their responsibility is as far as that IEP. That's why it's so important that we have regular ed teachers at the IEP meetings, because when you think about it, a lot of the accommodations that are going to be written on the IEP are things that are going to be implemented in that mainstream classroom, so that general ed teacher needs to know what their responsibility is. The case manager is also the person who's responsible for notifying anyone who has any action to be taken on the IEP. It's their responsibility to make sure that everyone knows their part.
Thank you. Another question is, in this particular case question is, what should I do if I'm not invited to a meeting where my son is discussed?
Well, hopefully if you were not invited, you at least were given written notice of any proposals that the district had made. And as a parent, I guess the way that I would deal with that is to put back to whoever sent me information or called me that that you're in disagreement with any recommendations that they might be making for placement because you were not involved in that process. I would also be requesting that we have a meeting to sit down and discuss it. Because again, as I stated, I think very clearly earlier, you as a parent, one of your roles is to be involved during placement discussion.
We have a couple questions going on special education, right? The questions really both pertain to our district about the meeting. I would like information about that, and also how do we go in our area?
Okay, well, there has to be a SEEK in every district. The fact that they're not having meetings would be a concern, and you may want to contact your director of special education regarding that. But also on PACER's website, we have a link to SEEK, and I would encourage you to go to that and contact one of Vava and my coworker. Her name is Barb Zimke, who is our expert with SEEK. So Barb can be contacted at PACER's main number and just leave a message that you want additional information on SEEKs.
You mentioned something, participant actually heard you mentioned something about a book, the tip on English. I missed that, and you referencing
I will, and it's not coming to me right at the moment, but I have it here. Just a second. I should know it by heart. Working Together is the title.
and is that a book?
That's a publication here at PACER that either through our website you can access our publications listing and order it that way, or even by calling Pacer and asking to have one mailed out.
Another question is involved when case worker and what is the role of case worker?
Well, I will say I have seen different people take different roles. I think that's a determination that you as a parent and that county caseworker need to make the decision as to what their role is going to be. As a parent, you have a right to invite anyone you feel has a knowledge of the child to participate in his IEP meetings. So as far as that, yes, it's fine that you're inviting someone, but as to the role they play, I think that's something that needs to be determined between you and the caseworker.
Unless there are any questions, the rest of the questions
Yes.
that you have asked, they're too specific. If you have any additional questions right now, send them in. We have where they can get for a 21-year-old.
Depends upon the type of services that you're talking about and whether or not that student has graduated from high school yet. But one resource that you may want to check out, again, you can connect through Pacer's website to Project C3, and they are one of the programs here at Pacer that works with young adults, and they might have some resources and can help direct you where you need to go. If it is a student that is still in high school and hasn't accepted that diploma, you may want to call in and talk specifically with an advocate. Otherwise, again, contacting Project C3 through Pacer's website, or even calling and just leaving a message to ask someone to call you. We more than likely can help you out with that.
Another question.
Okay, well, you know, my pat answer is, once again, it depends. If this is an initial IEP, they cannot start services until you have given them written permission that you agree with it. After that, any IEPs that come about, once you receive it, you have 14 calendar days to decide if you agree or disagree. That's when you're going to get that prior written notice in your consent form where you need to check one of those boxes. If you agree, definitely check yes, get it sent back to the school, and then they need to begin implementing those services. If you disagree, that's when things will go on hold until an agreement is reached. So again, with an initial IEP, they can't provide any services until you've agreed to those services. And then with supplemental IEPs after that, you've got your 14 calendar days to decide if you agree or disagree. And once they receive the signed agreement, they need to implement services. Oh. Okay, well, that is a very good question and is one that I am not able to answer, but I do have a referral name for you. And our public policy person here at Pacer, her name is Kim King. And you can again call Pacer's main number and just ask for Kim, and she will be able to answer that question for you. Thanks for asking, though. Well, if we're not going to get any more questions here, I think what we will do, oh, did we get something? Oh. No. Okay. What we'll do is we will end the webinar at this point. If you do have additional questions on it, feel free to contact us here at PACER. And I just want to thank all of you for attending today, and anything we can do, you know how to get a hold of us. Thanks so much.